The intro ready to go? Okay, I'm gonna set it live so they get a second of hamster before we kick the intro in. Okay. Warning. This podcast features adult subject matter, adult language, and things not meant for children to hear. Viewer discretion is advised. You've been warned. It has been brought to my attention that the I'm No Joe show has not been following proper journalistic protocols. So we're going to try and amend that. Starting tonight, we're going to be a professional broadcasting show doing professional commentary. Please enjoy. I'm just fucking around. You guys know we couldn't do a show like this all super serial. Come on, boy. What's wrong with you? You should know better than that by now. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to the latest episode of the I'm No Joe podcast, the show where every armchair quarterback can feel like an Eddie Bravo. Tonight, like most nights, I got some fine folks here with me to help break down this UFC 241 card we have got going this coming up weekend. First and foremost, the young gunner, the up-and-comer, the young stunner, RJ. How the fuck are you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. It's been a good week. Fucking been looking forward to this fucking fantastic pay-per-view with fucking that crybaby DC.
I know.
Can't wait for it.
I know. It's going to be so good.
Fuck
so
yeah.
We may or may not have a few other stragglers popping in here across the course of the show. Everybody had something going on tonight, so it's a miracle we managed to pull this out of our ass and put it all together. But here we are, ladies and gentlemen. So thank you again for tuning in. First and foremost, right off the top, like we like to do around here, the first thing I want to jump into is the news and recent events. Now, there have been several interesting developments that have happened since the last time we talked to you fine folks. So let's start right out at the tippy top. So the first thing that I want to mention real quick here, if you did not get a chance to see UFC Uruguay last week, holy shit, go back and rewatch that show. There was a hell of a card. Now, again, like most cards we've seen in 2019 so far, there was plenty of filler. But one of the things that I want to mention specifically about last week's card is Mr. Gan, one Francis Ngannou's French BJJ training partner, choked out a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt in Uruguay last weekend in his UFC debut. So if there was any question as to how Francis Ngannou is trying to, piece his game together a little tighter, look at the people that they train with. If you look at an athlete in the combat sports world and you want to see what they're doing to improve, and if you look at the guy like Gan, who was a very Ngannou-esque stature, you do not expect him to have lethal ground game capable of choking out a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. But lo and behold, that's exactly what we saw last weekend. And he said that this is just the tip of the iceberg, that they've been waiting for a chance to show what French MMA combat artists really can do. And if this gentleman and Francis Ngannou are any indication, boy, you better watch the fuck out when it officially becomes legal in France as of January, because I think we're about to see a lot more European talent start making their way over into the prominent view of the UFC. Now, from there, we will move along to a little more interesting news from last weekend. If you didn't see, now, I understand that people are always concerned about, fighters not getting paid enough and fighters not getting taken care of enough, but the thing that you don't really hear about a lot is the perks of being a UFC fighter and going out and, putting on a show, damage be damned, going out there and really just letting it all swing. And if there's anybody who is known for going out there and letting it all swing, it is one aluminum Mike Perry. Now, granted, he didn't win. He didn't even come close to winning. He put on a hell of a war, but he got his ass ragdolled. But the thing that I want to mention here is that even though Mike Perry went out there and got his ass whooped like a redheaded stepchild, he got to receive one of those rare perks from being in the UFC and going out there and putting your body on the line for a show by way of getting a free nose job. Now, if you haven't seen, it has pretty much been unanimously decided that Mike Perry had the worst nose breakage in UFC history, and this was even confirmed by a retweet and wish well from one Andrei Arlovsky, showing the pictures of their two crooked noses side by side, and Mike Perry had an entire squiggle road extra compared to what Andrei Arlovsky used to have. And if you've seen those pictures, I encourage you to Google if you haven't, because those boys both had some squiggly line noses, but Mike Perry had an entire maze turned into the cartilage from his nose. That shit was redonkulous. Now, the next thing I want to mention real quick from last weekend's Uruguay card, Valentina Shevchenko is a fucking Terminator. That woman was sent from the future to destroy women's MMA. And I understand that a lot of people have come out and bitched and said that, this wasn't an exciting fight, that she didn't go out and just, decimate Liz Carmouche like everyone expected her to, but she didn't have to. To get the belt from the champ, you have to beat the champ. And just like we predicted last week, everywhere that fight went, Valentina was better, and Valentina was faster, and Valentina was sharper. Granted, Liz Carmouche did get a couple of good shots in, but it was just a couple of shots and a full fight. Valentina just marched through and beat that ass. So it really is a point now where we have to wonder what comes next for Valentina. We already know that they are pitching Caitlin Chookagian so fucking hard to be her next title shot, but then you also have to watch, as much as I don't want to talk about it, for the biggest cringe fest in all of MMA right now, and that is gold medalist himself, Cringy Cejudo, calling out Valentina for the first intergender championship in the UFC. And I get that he was trying to be funny and he was trying to make a thing, I'm the gold hunter, bend the knee, yank fucking yank. But at the same time, be careful what you fucking wish for, son, because if you watch Ariel Helwani's show on Monday, not only did Valentina hear about Henry's little video, she saw the video and one-upped his ass. She specifically said, be careful what you wish for, because if this is what you want, this is what you will get. And not only is she willing to fight Henry Cejudo, she's willing to put gold for gold on the line, and told him, be careful what you wish for, because this may end up with you losing all of your gold. Now, I understand that men fighting women in MMA isn't the most popular topic, and it isn't the most popular subject, seeing as how we had some bad instances of behind-the-scenes incidents like that happen before, but this would be one of the very few exceptions that I would be willing to make as a fan to seeing a man and a woman fight together. I would happily pay whatever they want for that pay-per-view buy to see Henry Cejudo and Valentina Shevchenko step in there at 125 and legitimately square off, because I have zero doubt in my mind she would ragdoll his little ass all over that octagon like he has never been ragdolled before. So I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does, you can count my ass in on the happy train, ready to watch.
Can I say something about that real quick?
Absolutely.
So in the world that we're in currently, with gender equality, there was a feminist podcast that I was told about that was doing this, that I was actually talking about that. And they were like, let's get a petition going and make the UFC make this happen, because it's gender equality. They're both top level athletes. Let's make this happen. And they were completely fucking for this.
I mean, like I said, generally this isn't something that I advocate for, but he called for this.
Yeah.
And she openly said, if you want it, come get it. We can do that. I don't know. We will find out, though. But out of the woodwork, as we're talking about shenanigans, rolls through the door the one, the only, Fishtown's own Nick Devine. How you doing, brother?
What's up? Sorry I'm late, guys. And if I'm in and out, I apologize. Just dealing with a little toothache. So, but I do want to talk about a lot of these fights. So,
understandable. Glad we can at least get you on here for a little while.
hell yeah.
So, next thing I want to jump into real quick here. It was rumored that this fight was going to go one way. Now it has turned out that it is going another way, but it is officially set now. The headline for the October 12th UFC card will be one Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus the karate hottie Michelle Waterson. The headline. Now, they originally were bidding for Waterson to get the next title shot against Andrade, and then we found out that that's already been set for UFC China. She's going to defend against Weili Zhang. That, I think, is going to be an interesting fight as well. So that basically shut Waterson and Joanna both up, who were clamoring for a title shot. But the benefit of that is that now we get to watch those two fight each other for what is going to be called the next 115 title contender status here. But either way, I think this is going to be a very interesting fight to watch because Joanna is on an ass whip roll. She is just getting beat left and right everywhere she goes. 115, 125, doesn't matter. She's lost her last 3 in a row and doesn't really show any signs that she's doing anything to change her game, that she's anything more than what she was when Rose first beat her to start this whole train off. But Waterson isn't exactly the hottest commodity in the UFC market right now either. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one shakes out. Next thing I want to jump to real quick here. The UFC during fight weeks for pay-per-view numbered events like we've got this week, we get both the embedded series leading up to the fight and the road to the UFC, insert whatever number it is here. This one obviously being the road to UFC 241. They generally do a in-depth breakdown and follow of the fighters in the main and the co-main event here. The thing that I wanted to mention most from the road to UFC 241, which, I understand is, the UFC's pride and joy. It's their baby. They do it all in-house. Production value is spectacular. My problem with this one is that they did an entire 20-minute spiel about how Daniel Cormier has cleared out the 205 division and went unchecked in his rise from 205 up to heavyweight. They literally made this entire fake narrative and completely cropped John Jones, his 2 defeats of DC and his clearing out of the 205 division, out of the story, and kind of tried to refocus it like DC is the one who came in, cleaned out 205, and then when there was no one left for him, made the jump up to heavyweight to 265, and then snatched the belt from the heavyweight champion to become the champ. So to unpack that real quick, no, DC did not clear out 205. That was John Jones doing, and to the extent that he cleared DC out of 205, he didn't choose to go to heavyweight. He basically got run out of 205 himself and had no choice but to go to heavyweight. He was not the champ. He did not earn the 205 belt. It was given to him when Jones was suspended from USADA, and he didn't snatch the belt from the heavyweight champion. He fluked his way into the belt from the greatest heavyweight the UFC has ever seen, which is also why we're having this discussion now, because we're going to run that one back this weekend. So it's like, I get that they're trying to promote their fighters, but when you're trying to promote your fighter, you can't completely rewrite a narrative that's been documented on video and pay-per-view sources like the DC Jones rivalry has, and the fact that Jones is the 205 king and has been even while he was suspended still. So there's that. Quick little fight announcement here in the middle of a couple different pieces of news that I want to mention. There was some talks of both of these gentlemen trying to book fights independently, and it seems like neither one of them have fallen out or have followed through, rather. So the fallout of those have left us with another fight that we just got announced for UFC 243 in Australia, Adesanya versus Whitaker. And that will be one Raging Al Iaquinta versus Dan the Hangman Hooker. That's going to be an interesting fight for a couple different reasons. This is Al basically holding down the top of the stack, Hooker trying to make his way up there while also fighting for that Aussie pride because it's an Australian card and he is a Kiwi training partner of Adesanya. So that's going to be an interesting fight, and it's going to be interesting to see how the style of Hooker matches up with Al, as well as that home crowd, home country support behind him, because it's inevitable when you fight in your home country against someone from another country. Doesn't matter if it's in the US, doesn't matter if it's in Australia, if it's in South America, the home fighters always get just a little bit more cheer and a little bit more ruckus from the crowd, and you can tell that it definitely has an impact. So I'm curious to see if that little bump in hometown support, so to speak, is going to be enough to get Dan Hooker's confidence up to the point where he can really compete with Raging Al, because I think stylistically Al's a little bit tougher of a fucking opponent than Dan might have looked at, and I think this one's going to be a little bit of a tough fight for him. But again, we'll have to wait and see how that one plays out once we get down to Australia in the next couple of weeks here. Next thing I want to mention real quick, we mentioned Ariel Helwani's show earlier. I want to go back to that real quick because he had a whole bunch of really great guests on this week, and there's a couple things that I wanted to make a point to mention that were kind of glossed over or glorified, if you will, during his show, and I feel need a little bit more addressing here. The first one, Ariel said himself that he feels like aluminum Mike Perry, well, he called him platinum Mike, but you know what I'm talking about. Mike Perry has reached the Cowboy Cerrone status, and that he's the guy the UFC calls to fight anyone, anywhere, anytime, at any weight. No, he has not. Not only is Mike Perry not at that Cowboy Cerrone status, he can't really even be compared, because when Cerrone goes up or Cerrone takes a last-minute fight, he's always ready, and he always looks good. He's prepared to fight. Granted, we've seen Perry take last-minute fights. This Luque fight kind of fell into his lap a little bit late, but you see how that played out. Mike Perry doesn't have the skill set or the win streak or just the all-around fight status that Cowboy Cerrone does. So I resent a little bit his making that comparison here. The next thing I want to address that went down on the show, the Bellator Ladies 125 champion, Elimele McFarlane, was in Liz Carmouche's corner for UFC Uruguay. I like her as a fighter. I really do. But the more she talks on a microphone, the more you start to get that she kind of has a little bit of a sense of delusion, I think, here. Not just in her fighting ability, but in what she sees or thinks that she sees in the fights. And then she went at the end of her spiel and went off about how her and all her fellow Hawaiians are now protesting the building of the world's largest telescope in Hawaii. And I think that unto itself is a weird cross to bear. I get that you don't want commercial pollution and you don't want big, devastation of the natural resources, but this is potentially the largest telescope in the world. And this isn't something for some asshat to go sit behind, wheel around, and look at googly shit in the sky. This is a scientific piece of equipment. This is the largest scientific piece of equipment of this nature on the planet, which would potentially bring lots and lots of money and other available potential protection to the island. But they don't want it. They want to keep everything the way that it is. And like I said, on one hand, I can kind of understand it, but on the other hand, that's a weird hill to die on, in my opinion here.
Can I add something to that?
Absolutely.
So I mean, they've been talking about this for years now, since it was announced that there was going to be a large scale telescopic observatory on the island of Hawaii, before it was announced that it was going to be the largest in the world.
Right.
Now, where it's going to be made, there is nothing there. It's just flat land.
Yeah.
So it's not destroying the ecosystem. There's nothing there already. It used to be a resort that got flattened out, and they're turning it into an observatory. So I don't understand why people are talking about, oh, it's destroying the ecosystem and it's going to ruin the habitat. It's a barren plot of land that has been barren since the 90s, since before I was even born. And I don't understand where people are coming in, oh, it's going to destroy everything. That's going to bring a large amount of money into the economy of Hawaii. And what people don't understand is that Hawaii has a fuckload of drugs, prostitution, and shit like that on the island. This is going to be really good because you're bringing in another level of education and revenue into that state, that island.
Well, and that's one of the things that I was referring to here as well, is that this isn't a public telescope. This isn't like they're going to build a fucking museum and start a fucking velvet rope line across the roads of Hawaii. This is specifically for large federal scientific investments and for scientific crews to come and do legitimate scientific research with. So this is federal money and federal protection trying to come down and help. So like I said, I see both sides of it. I just think it's a weird hill to die on.
But the education behind it, because this is also going to be something that's open to the colleges on the island.
Yep.
People talk about all the time, education is going to save the youth of this country. Education. When it comes down to something being made or built for education, everybody has a problem with it. Yep,
I agree. As I said, it's a weird hill to die on, man. Like, I get it, but I don't. So, what are you going to do? That's another one. We're just going to have to wait and see how this whole shenanigan unfolds.
It's like the fucking pipeline in Indian territory. Just like that shit.
Yeah, no shit. But the next thing that I want to talk about real quick. Now, this one, a lot of times when we get weird stories like the one we just talked about, I can clearly see both sides of the issue. There's not just one side to an issue like that. The next thing I want to talk about real quick doesn't really have a different side to the issue. There's really only one side of this coin. They had talked about the Pettis Diaz fight coming up this weekend. Obviously, they had Duke Roufus come on himself on Ariel's show, and he had a lot of really good things to say. Talked a little bit about how they've been training, the difference in preparing Anthony for 170 versus 155. The game plan that you got to use against a guy like Diaz. But he ended it with something that really legitimately caught me off guard from Duke Roufus. And I never would have expected someone like Duke Roufus to say something like this. And what he ended his segment on Ariel with was, and I quote, "To the fans, don't be mean to us online, and we'll tell you more things about how things work." What? Now, aside from all the ridiculousness that immediately pops into your head to that, this immediately and instantly took me back to a quote that Dana White had to make in reference to UFC fighters catching flack online not too long ago. And Dana's exact quote was, "We're in the fight business. We're not in the be nice business. If we start making everyone be nice before a fight, why are we fighting? These are grown adults making their own decisions, building an agitative situation where they're going to fist fight. We're not in the nice business. You don't become a fighter to be the nice guy. And if you're doing that, you're in the wrong industry." So for Duke Roufus, of all people, to end his segment with "don't be mean to us," it's a little off-putting, to say the least. Now, moving on from Ariel's show here, there were a couple other fairly notable announcements that have just come out in the last 24 hours, either early today or late last night, that I feel absolutely worth warranting here before we break into the meat and potatoes. First and foremost, two big fight announcements for the December 7th card. The main event and co-main event have now been set. They were announced last night and then this morning, respectively. The main event, or excuse me, the co-main event, rather, will be the return of the semi-retired and now unretired, I guess, Stefan the Skyscraper Struve versus one Ben Rothwell. That's going to be an interesting fight to see just if Struve really still has it, if he's been, really getting after it while he's been retired, and against a guy like Rothwell who's not going to take it light on you. He's coming in there to take your head off your fucking shoulders. So that's going to be an interesting one to watch. But then we get the headline for that card, which is even more devastating and potentially destructive than those two names. And that is going to be one Walt Harris versus Alistair the Ream Overeem. That's going to be a potential fireworks show for the main and co-main on that card here. Both very big fights with very big gentlemen that you are going to want to keep an eye on here. The next thing that I want to mention real quick kind of surprised me, especially with her resurgence in popularity lately. It was announced yesterday that Alpha Cat Zingano has officially been released from the UFC. According to Kat's statement, she has a film project going on, a documentary that she's working on that's very important to her, that she wants to get made and get put out and get properly done. And the UFC was basically pressuring her to hurry up and take a fight, which would directly conflict with that. And she straight up told them, like, I can't. I'm already working on something. You knew I was working on something. This isn't in my timeline here. And the UFC basically said, oh, well, that's okay. Then we're just going to cut your contract and let you go. It feels like Dana's been doing a whole lot of that lately to a whole lot of people who might not necessarily have been warranted getting cut or been, ready in that sense as well for a cut. And I feel like this is probably the biggest loss the UFC has let slide through in recent announcements here. I get that Lineker got let go and that we got, plenty of other people. We got Elias Theodoro got let go. We got plenty of other people who have been let go that you can kind of understand. The Theodoro one was a little odd because he got cut off of one loss, but he got cut off a loss. So if you're going to make an argument, I can kind of understand that. Kat Zingano has been coming back in popularity, and she's been looking pretty damn fierce. Aside from that fucking toe in the eye that really put a monkey wrench in her coming back plans, I mean, there's not really a lot bad that you can say about Kat Zingano, and she's a great role model for women as well. But again, this is a situation similar to what we saw with when they let Cyborg go. I don't see Kat Zingano being a free agent very long, and she's got essentially all the same options that Cyborg did. She can go to Bellator where they've got a legitimate ladies class over there and legitimate lady contenders. She can go to ONE FC where they've got legitimate ladies over there. She can go to Ryzen and juice her tits off, literally. Go crush cans with Gabby. That's what I think that Cyborg's going to.
I was just about to say that.
But then you got the other side of that coin. She can decide that she's going to stop cutting the weight to get down to 125, 135, and she can put a little bit of mass back on, and she can go fight in PFO where they have a 155-pound class for the women right now, and those gals are getting the fuck after it. So she's got plenty of options on the table here. It's not like Kat Zingano is not essentially a household name for the medium to, hardcore level MMA fans. She was literally a pioneer of women's MMA. So I don't think she's going to be a free agent for long. I just think it's a little weird that the UFC cut her. Now,
yeah, it's weird, because there's no guidelines to keeping a fighter. It's always just like that's just such a weird one. That came out of nowhere, and it's like, well, what about Conor, Nate Diaz? Like, whenever they want to fight, they come right back whenever they want. Like, there's no and that's fine. I think that's fine. Why can't she do that? And it's just UFC doesn't have many female fighters to begin with, so.
Right.
Why are you letting go of these female fighters? Now you let go of 2 stars within 2 weeks. So yeah, it's weird. There should be some kind of guideline. Same thing with like the interim belts. Like it's always like a weird timing. Like, oh, he was out for a year, so we're going to do an interim belt.
It's never the same. It's never like an even thing.
Yeah, just whatever works for them.
I mean, I mean, but nowadays in the combat sport industry, man, you're having big names coming out left and right, people that are just hidden away in some state, some country, coming out of nowhere, being brought up into Bellator, ONE FC, Rise in UFC, and they're just fucking. They're becoming that Ronda Rousey. They're becoming that John Jones status of just who the fuck is this person.
Yep.
So I mean, when it comes down to it, like, oh, you cut one person, but give it 2 months, there'll be somebody just as good, green as hell, coming into the UFC.
Yep. No, and on that note, there's actually been a couple of mentions of some ladies, a couple of them Olympians, a couple of them just former like World Grand Prix masters and fucking Muay Thai masters, very similar to like a Shevchenko-esque fighter who, like you said, are green as a fucking unripened banana, but they're getting the attention and they're getting talked about, get pulled up to the pros. So I agree with you 100%. There are absolutely some definite prospect ladies on the horizon. It just sucks that the weird roundabout way we got to get to those ladies getting their shot is by, losing icons like this. But it's another one we're going to have to watch and see how this plays out. And, speaking of people that the UFC kind of got what they could and then let them go, there was an announcement just before we went live on the show tonight that I felt definitely warranted mentioning. Bigfoot Silva, the once infamous UFC heavyweight with some of the heaviest hands ever to step into an octagon, has officially signed with Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship and is apparently going to try and come after that heavyweight belt that Chase Sherman just wrapped around his big old goddamn waist a couple weekends ago here, taking away from AJ. That was a spectacular fight as well. So if any of you missed BKFC 7, unfortunately, we did not get to see Jason Knight go in and dominate that headline fight like he was originally planning, trying to set up that rematch with Artem. What we did get was several very, very great fights in its place, though. So with Bigfoot coming into the mix over there, that is definitely going to shake up that heavyweight division in a situation where the BKFC heavyweight division, in my opinion, is stacked way more than the UFC's heavyweight division is right now. So that we definitely will have to see, because as we've noticed, as UFC fighters start to transition their way out of the UFC and gradually making their way over to BKFC, they're not doing bad. The boys that are coming, and the girls as well, that are coming from the UFC and making their way to BKFC are really coming out and putting on spectacular fights. And even though Silva might have been a little past his prime as far as UFC goes, like we said before, this ain't the UFC. Bare Knuckle is a very different animal. And those gigantic hands and that 8-foot-high chin are definitely going to be giving Bigfoot an advantage in that bare knuckle ring, I feel here. So last thing that I want to mention real quick in the news and recent events segment, a very, I'll say, true to character move, because it's absolutely something on brand and something you would expect to see done here, but it still was just a little off-putting to see it actually happen. Talking about open workouts yesterday, Nate Diaz, as soon as he comes out onto the stage, walks right over to someone in the crowd, takes a big fat joint and fires that motherfucker up and walks back and forth across the stage, taking big old pulls and then doing the standard, Nate Diaz 209 raw shit. It has apparently been revealed since then that this was pre-planned and it was a CBD joint so that he wasn't going to get in any trouble. The downside to that is that while you were trying to look like a badass, you also kind of inadvertently broke California state law in that you're smoking in an indoor arena that doesn't allow smoking. So I have no doubt that there's going to be a little pushback from that. But I definitely see, it was a very Nate Diaz move. It's something you absolutely expected from him. And then in true Nate Diaz form today, during the ceremonial face-offs, we got Anthony Pettis and we had Dana White there to announce it, and no Nate Diaz. He flaked on the face-off. Now, as of starting the show, there is still no word that I saw as to where the fuck he was, why the fuck he flaked, what the fuck he was thinking here. But if you're a guy who's been out of the ring for 3+ years, your last time in the ring was a loss. You're trying to prove that you deserve the push the UFC never gave you, that they, to their credit, have absolutely been promoting the shit out of Nate Diaz in this fight for the last couple of weeks here. I mean, legitimately, more Nate Diaz coverage during the last 2 weeks than we've seen for any of his previous fights, in my opinion. And then you no-show on the fucking face-off. I mean, like I said, it's a very true to form Diaz maneuver, but it's not exactly something that I can see being a good thing to do in a situation like this, where we've got a fight as important as your first octagon entrance in 3 fucking years. On top of that, a fight that you have been calling for so that you can fight the Wheaties, dude. You got your chance and you're fucking it up, Nate. Like, it's not that I want to see him do bad, but it's like at this point you almost expect Diaz to shoot himself in the foot on the path that he's been going. So, you know, tomorrow morning is the official weigh-in, and then the ceremonial, you know, face off in their underwear and all that shit talking that goes on stage. So we'll have to see, but this is something that I've been saying since they announced this fight would potentially happen. There was essentially nothing to guarantee that we were actually going to see Nate Diaz make it to the octagon this Saturday. And from, you know, smoking the joint on stage, which it's dumb, but I fucking get it, to then, you know, on top of that, now you flake on the face off and you make yourself look like an asshole to the world as the UFC's been promoting you with big dollar promotions. I'm realistically starting to wonder if we're actually going to see Nate step into the octagon on Saturday. I mean, this is very reminiscent a little bit later in the setup, but this is very reminiscent to what happened the last time that we were going to see, or we thought we were going to see, Nate get into the cage when they had him matched up with Dustin Poirier, and it was set. They did the press conference, and then come to find out that was the same press conference that the Conor fight got announced. And then, of course, Nate got super butthurt and walked off, and then he blamed it on Poirier. But Nate Diaz flat out said he wasn't going to take that goddamn fight and be on Conor's undercard. So we knew that Nate can still easily mentally be rattled by Conor and isn't really determined to get back into the octagon and show what he's worth to try and get the UFC to pay him what he says he wants. So, I mean, on one hand, like I said, most of these stories, there's two sides, and I can see both of them. I get that Nate wants the fucking respect he feels like he deserves, the money that he feels like he deserves from the UFC, but at the same time, when you do stupid shit like this, why would they care? Why would they try? Why you're making them feel dumb for putting all this promotion behind you, and then you're going to flake publicly on the first chance you get to shine? That, I don't know, man. That's what I said. It's if nothing else, this is a true to form Nate Diaz maneuver. But that being said, that's the last I want to talk about news and recent events here. That's going to bring us to our new segment, the loved, the beloved, the infamous Casual Corner. And when we bring on Casual Corner, we bring on our favorite casual, the one, the only, the Miss LUMI Streams. I think I see her. I thought I saw her. We had a LUMI. Do we have a LUMI?
Oh, hold on.
Is she in there? I thought we had a LUMI.
Hello!
Oh, that we've got a Casual Corner after all. Holy shit. Hello, Miss LUMI. How are you?
I gotta resize everything. My OBS is being weird.
You know, stranger things have happened.
You mean starting the show with no audio for you guys, so you spent 30 minutes talking with nobody able to hear you?
Wouldn't be the first time.
Casual Corner here. What's up?
Oh, we have got a very casual friendly card coming up this weekend here. And I'm curious as to how you saw some of these fine yoked gentlemen's shenanigans. Ready for your approval or disapproval here?
Okay, so I actually did not get to do as much research as I wanted to, but I did do some at least. So, I'll start with the Yoel versus Paulo fight, I suppose.
Gotcha. Battle of the supplements.
Fucking freaks of nature, bro. Like, how much
Absolutely.
weight does Yoel have to cut?
That's a question that a lot of people ask because he's very secretive in his training, but rumor is that he walks around north of 280 and then cuts down to 250-ish for the fight.
Oh my god. And then we got Paulo. So I think that this was another shocker, is a lot of people haven't been able to go against Yoel because he just looks so massive. But then they brought in Paulo, who's actually this pretty similar. So
Very much.
that's really cool. I wrote that a lot of his I could be wrong with this because I am a casual. Paulo's never had a fight go to decision. It's always been knockout or TKO.
He's also still fairly green in the UFC as well. So it's a great observation, but it also comes with a little bit of an asterisk because while he has not had a decision, he also has not had a lot of fights in the UFC yet. He's just now getting to the point where he's starting to get matched up with the higher level talent like a Yoel Romero. So
that was the other thing that I was thinking when I was looking into him. He's on a 12 fight win streak. That's pretty insane.
it is.
But
It is, but
he's fighting
that's
newer
one of those
people.
also, yeah, that's one of those asterisks where you also have to remember that yeah, he's 12-0, but he's also 12-0 against guys getting him to the UFC, not 12-0 against guys in the UFC. So again, definitely a prospect, but little details make the difference.
Yeah, the fact that Yoel currently is who he is, and Paulo's going to be going against him, while it seems fair, I hope Paulo doesn't let it go to his head. He's on a 11 or 12 win streak, and then goes against this fucking freak of nature.
Yep.
And
absolutely.
Gets destroyed.
It's going to be a fireworks show. That's for damn sure. Neither one of those dudes are small, and neither one of them hit light. So it'll be fun.
Then we got Anthony versus Nate. This one was another interesting one. For Anthony, the only thing I wrote down was one last fight against Wonder Boy.
He did. He absolutely did.
I'm a nobody. But Wonder Boy is supposedly a legend.
Well, and that's the other thing about that fight against Wonder Boy was that was the first time we've ever seen Anthony fighting at 175 or 170 pounds rather. He's generally been 145 or 155 pound fighter. He held the belt at 155. Then literally his first fight ever at 170 was that Wonder Boy fight. And we saw how that went. So that's how we ended up with the fight against him and Nate at 170. It's going to be interesting. Moving up a weight class is generally not an easy thing to do, and it's generally not something to be taken lightly. We saw a great example of that when Luke Rockhold thought that he could move up a weight class real easy, and then Jan Blachowicz put him into fucking orbit with his little feet.
Yeah, so Anthony, I feel like he's going to have the little bit to worry about that. He's been fighting some of these people, but the last person was notorious, so hopefully, just same with Paulo, he doesn't let it go to his head. For Nate, he's got a 4-inch reach on him. Did he lost his last fight with McGregor, but he's won the other one, so we're waiting for the try.
Yep, that's one of those. I dare say that might be a more anticipated trilogy fight than DC versus Jones, because Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor 1 was the first time we had ever seen any weakness in Conor McGregor's game. To be fair, it was also the first time that Conor McGregor had ever fought at 170 pounds. And when they ran it back, Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz 2 was a very different fight. And McGregor obviously won that one by decision, but it was, you got to see a little bit more of what Nate kind of tried to flex in the first fight, not working in the second fight. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind coming into this fight as well.
Here's the part that started making me a little So, he's got the same fight style as Kobe. And apparently he's also kind of a cocky asshole. But at least he's supposedly better than Kobe at what Kobe tries to do.
Very
So
much.
if he is an asshole, maybe he can back it up with his fighting skills, I hope.
Generally, yes.
And then honestly, I can't read the rest of this. I wrote, can take a punch, fights like Kobe. He's a pressure fighter.
Yes, he is.
I don't remember that's the Kobe thing where you constantly try to do takedowns.
Always. Yeah, always moving forward, always trying to put something on him, always keeping something going at him, whether it's a takedown or with Nate Diaz, a lot of the times it's just 4 and 5 and 6 shot punch combos with a stop and slap thrown in the middle to keep you off your game. But it's always constant pressure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know what I
punches, not the hardest punches, but a lot of them.
Exactly.
I don't remember what I wrote here, but apparently it was enough for me to write it. And I thought I would guess I would understand it. But 24 hours later, I have no idea why I wrote this. 1 KO entire fight career. I don't know what that was supposed to be for.
I don't know where that was coming from either.
No, it's gone. Gone. So.
It happens.
Just because Nate seems, I don't know, I didn't really like in Kobe's style. Like, that whole fight was just infuriating. It didn't help that Lawler was just kind of sitting there like a sleeping bag, but
Absolutely.
I wasn't too impressed with the constantly, hey, I just want to fight you against the fence and put you on the ground. I don't really like that kind of fighting. So I'm going for Anthony. Hopefully Wonder Boy doesn't get in your head. Hope you win this one, boy.
Just so you know, Lumi, Nate Diaz is more a striker. He's very good. Like, if somebody takes him down, he's very good. But he's not going to go for the takedown. He's more of a striker. He's very entertaining to watch, especially when he's on point. He's very entertaining.
No shit.
Yeah, then I can hope he's not going to be another Kobe or whatever his name is.
Colby, yeah.
He's not like him. I might warm up to him, but just by the fact that I've heard that he's a douchebag and that he fights like Kobe except better, I'm a little on the fence, but I still don't like douchebags, so I'm hoping Anthony gets it. Then,
Understandable.
DC, I hear this guy is a fucking horrible person. Horrible.
To be fair, DC is, I wouldn't say he's a horrible person. I say he's a horrible personality. Because if you look at DC outside of fighting, he's a high school wrestling coach. He's an Olympic gold medal winner. He's a great
Don't
MMA
you
coach.
steal my thunder. I did that research and found out he was an Olympic person.
That's right. That's right. But personality-wise, he's not good.
Yeah, I don't like cocky douchebags. I really wanted Kobe to get struck by lightning as he was, or somebody possibly throw something, or maybe even catch an STD to get it disqualified.
Stranger things have happened. Yeah, it's a possibility.
But yeah, for DC, I wrote in parentheses next to his name, DC parenthesis, asshole parenthesis.
I agree with that. I agree with that as well.
Only lost 1 fight in his career of MMA.
Technically 2, but yeah.
I was gonna say one of them was turned to a no contest, but yeah, that's accurate.
That's still pretty crazy. The fact he's an Olympic wrestler. And then I did do a little bit of research. He did a fight against Stipe and was actually Stipe was kicking his ass, and he just started throwing like really sloppy wild punches and got him.
Yeah, he caught him with an uppercut from the clinch. Basically, he got in after Stipe was working him and got under Stipe's guard, and when it looked like he was going to roll out, he actually used that to make room and catch Stipe with an uppercut that is arguably one of the biggest fluke shots we've seen in a long time. And that's exactly why we're having this run back here this weekend. It's because of that one punch.
Yeah, I'm going for Stipe, of course, because I don't like douchebags. As a volunteer firefighter, that's fucking awesome. The fact that you...
Yeah. 2 houses at that.
That's awesome. I don't like decision fights. I wrote has fewer decisions. I don't know if that meant that he had fewer decisions in DC.
DC has had several decisions, and the vast majority of Stipe's fights are stoppages, are knockouts, or knockdowns. Stipe does not go to decision very often at all.
Yeah, I wrote KO, TKO, win. Doesn't he normally also do this within the second round? He doesn't even go to the third round, so...
Quite often, yeah. And it's not only that he's winning the majority of his fights in the second round, it's the people he's beating in the second round. Stipe has legitimately taken out the greatest heavyweights that have competed in the UFC almost in succession in setting the record for the most heavyweight title defenses that led him up to that last fight.
Yeah, so I'm going with Stipe. Just all around good person. Seems like he deserves it. No, I couldn't think of somebody better to get that kind of spotlight and recognition. So I'm rooting for Stipe.
Absolutely. Good pick, I'd say. Good picks. Good casual breakdowns, ma'am.
No problem. Anytime. Peace out.
Thank you very much. So that will bring us to the meat and potatoes of this particular episode. The reason that we are having this particular show right here, that would be UFC 241, Cormier versus Miocic 2. This is the run back of the fight that we were just talking about here. One of the most notable one-shot, oh shit moments in heavyweight recent history here. So as is kind of becoming the trend as they're starting to put more and more fights on, we absolutely have some fluff or some filler on this card here. So again, we're not going to break down every fight on this card, but there are several that I feel are worth mentioning, if not fully breaking down. To start at the very tippy top here, the very first fight opening the card on the early prelims, we're talking about Sabina Mazo versus Shauna Dobson. This is one of those fights where I'm not going to give it a full breakdown. What I want to say about this particular fight is that they're opening a show with a woman that's too small to be fighting at featherweight against a woman who's too big to be fighting at featherweight. I'm glad that they're using this as the opening fight, because this one, while I don't think it's going to be a terrible fight, I don't think it's a great fight to open your card with here. So we're just going to say it's a lady that's too big for featherweight fighting a lady that's too small to be fighting at featherweight here. Now, moving on from there, the next fight that we have got is actually one that I think maybe should have been the opening fight, if not the, premier fight for the early prelims, much more so either one than the middle fight here. We are talking about Mr. Perfect himself, Kang Kyung Ho versus Brandon Killaby Davis. Now, this is going to be a battle of tiny guys who get the fuck after it. Both of these dudes are very strong. Both of these dudes are very agile, and they are both intense grapplers. Not so much wrestlers as they are grapplers. They're going to grab you. They're going to throw you around. They're going to manhandle you more than they're going to lay on you like a wet blanket or try and wrestle fuck your leg to the ground. So this one is going to be an interesting matchup at 135 going down. I like Mr. Perfect, but I think in this situation, Killa B, especially after he's done some press this week and kind of talked about his preparation process and how he goes about his weight cut, how he does his, intense training to keep himself in 135 shape, I think Killa B is going to take this one. I think he's just a little too hyped. I think he's got a little too much training built in. I think he's got a little too much all-around fight IQ. I think Mr. Perfect might be a little bit of a step off here, and I think Killa B is going to wrap this one up. The last one I want to talk about here, the premier fight, as it were, on the early prelims. It's an interesting matchup. It's not necessarily a big fan favorite, but if you've been following the UFC during the course of the end of 2018 and then up until now in 2019, one particular lady has had one of the worst sets of fight luck you can imagine. I think at this point she had 5 fights in a row canceled on her due to injury or illness or something from either part, predominantly from her opponents. And then when she got in on the last fight, it was a decision that I feel was absolutely given to her opponent wrongly. But we are talking about the inevitable, the one and only Jodie Esquibel, this time against Hannah Cyphers. Now, neither one of these ladies have spectacularly impressive resumes as far as MMA goes, but as we've seen time and time again, what you've got on the paper on your resume is not necessarily who you are as a fighter. And I think this is one of those situations where, especially given that last bad decision, we really haven't had a chance as fans to see Jodie Escobar perform to what she's capable of, to perform to where she's trying to get to, because I don't care who you are, 4 fight camps in a row getting canceled right before your fight is going to have a mental effect on you. And it's also going to have a physical effect on you because you've gotten your body ready for a race 4 times in a row and then you didn't get to run. So there's absolutely going to be a mental effect that we're going to have to keep an eye out for here. She looked pretty good in her last fight, but I think if anything, the last fight being a bad decision that didn't go her way is going to be more fuel for the fire here. And I think that Jodie's going to come out and she's going to want to make a statement and show people why they need to start having backup fighters ready for her in case this shit happens so that they can keep her in the octagon. She's a great fighter. I think Jodie Escobar is going to take this one, and I think it's going to be a pretty dominant fashion here. But like I said, these first couple fights here, there's not a whole lot to break down, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about them here. Moving along to the prelim card, there's really only one fight that I want to talk about here. There are a couple, to be fair, that do have some potential to be interesting here, but the only fight that I really want to make a point to talk about and actually give some time to here is the next to premiere, the next to last fight on the prelim card, and that is one Rafael Asunciao versus Corey Sandhagen. This fight, I do not for the life of me understand why it is on the prelims. This one legitimately has the potential to be one of the greatest fights of the entire night. These gentlemen are both dangerous guys, and it is a great matchup stylistically here. Asunciao is coming off of a just devastating, shocking loss that nobody really saw coming. Sandhagen is trying to build some momentum here. Asunciao is trying to get his name back into title contention here because he was on a hell of a roll before his last little trip up. This is going to be one of those where neither one of these dudes are going to come out and have it light. Both of these dudes are going to come with everything that they have got in their tank, and they're going to try and put forth the effort to make an example here. And I think it's going to be fireworks from start to finish here. I love Corey Sandhagen. I love his style. I love his personality. He's a great fighter. He's a great person to watch. But I think in this situation here, I think Asunciao, both coming off of that trip up and just on the roll that he was before then, I think it's just a little bit too much. I think Rafael Asunciao is going to take this match. I think it's going to go to round 2 because I don't think he wants to let this one go to the judges. And neither one of these guys are really big decision type of fighters. They both really try and go out there and get after it. But I think in this situation, I think Asunciao is just going to be a little bit too much for Sandhagen here. So now that's going to bump us in to the meat and potatoes of the meat and potatoes, as it were, the main card. This one, to their credit, not a ton of fluff. The main card is actually all pretty damn good fights, with the exception of a little hiccup here. So right off the top, the first fight on the main card here, an absolute fucking barn burner. Derek Brunson versus Ian Hamish. This is two gentlemen who, again, are going to come out there and they're going to give it everything here. We have got striking and grappling versus striking and grappling. Neither one of these guys are small. Neither one of these guys are slow. And neither one of these guys are lazy. These are two up-and-comers, if you will. Brunson's kind of an OG, but he had a hell of a slippery slope. And is really starting to try and get some momentum back underneath him here. So he's a prospect in the sense that he's trying to get back to title contention. He's a title prospector, not so much an entire UFC prospector. But then we've got across from him, Ian Hamish, who is fairly new to the UFC, but definitely making splashes on his way up. I think this is one of those situations where we're going to have to find out which one of them can get in control first, who can get their will imposed on the other person first. I love Ian Heinisch, but I think at this point, if you've been following his social media, if you've been following all the clamoring that he's been doing online, I think Derek Brunson is mad as fuck that he is not getting the shots that he feels he should be. He's not getting the opponents he feels that he should be. And I think this is one of those situations where he's going to come out and he's going to try and put Ian Hamish away in a fashion that gives him enough time on the microphone or gives him enough attention when he gets to the microphone to really start trying to call his way back up into the top tier of the division. I don't think it's going to be an easy fight, but I feel like in this situation, I think Derek Brunson is going to beat Ian Hamish. I think we're just going to have to wait to see how it plays out, because these are both gentlemen that if it goes to the ground, they can handle it on the ground. If it stays on the feet, they can both throw on the feet. But I think this is going to be one of those situations where Derek Brunson is just a little bit too evasive, has a little bit too much of a chin for a guy like Hamish, and I think he's going to end up taking this one here.
Yeah, Brunson's got the reach too. He's got a good amount of height on him too. Yeah, I like Ian too, but I would say Brunson as well. That's definitely a really good fight. It really is. I don't know why that's not the next fight, but whatever. Because they're going to open the card strong, but you don't really have to do that if the card's already sold, right?
Right, exactly. The card that's got this strong of an ending on it, I mean, I'm happy that they're going to open it strong. That's fine with me.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say, oh, Brunson on this. He has, as Meter said, he did have a slippery slope. But I mean, he's been in the UFC for a handful of years now, so he is more well-rounded than somebody that's only been here for 3 or 4 fights. I mean, there's nothing bad to say about Ian. I mean, for being in the UFC the short amount of time, I mean, the kid's making moves. He definitely could, if he keeps going the way he has a fucking fantastic career ahead of him. But tonight, I'm gonna have to say, fucking Brunson on this. Run this back a year from now, and I'd like to see the progress and the development that Ian has made. But tonight, I'm gonna have to say Brunson.
I absolutely agree. And I think, especially with the way that Ian Hamish has come in and really just established himself right out the gate, I agree completely. Give him another year worth of experience against Brunson caliber guys, and I think Ian Hamish is going to be a very serious contender in this division. I completely agree with you there. Now, moving along from that fight to one of the more fluffer / filler-esque fights that I was talking about here on the card, but only really on one side of it here. I'm talking about Gabriel Benitez versus Super Sadiq Youssef. Now, Super Sadiq is the guy that I personally use as one of the rare examples of someone coming up to and then out of the Dana White Contender Series and being legitimate. I constantly complain, both to anyone who will listen in my real life and online, about the Dana White Contender Series just hyping up soup cans for beating up other soup cans like they just won the fucking title in the UFC. And I don't agree with that at all. What I do agree with is that the guys that come out of the Contender Series that are legitimate, getting legitimate shots to prove themselves and doing that, is a beautiful thing. The problem is that is not the standard. That is not what we see time after time. More often than not, we see the other side of it. We see a guy who's a fucking soup can, comes in, beats the shit out of another soup can. They give him a fucking ticker tape parade. They throw him into the UFC, and he fucking trips over his own feet, falls flat face first. Super Sadiq is the exception to what has essentially become the rule. Super Sadiq is one of the most explosive, one of the most exciting prospects to come out of that Contender Series. And he has really started to make a name for himself in the UFC as a whole. My problem with that is that they've got this potential future superstar, great attitude, great ability, great fight style, and they keep fucking throwing him soup cans now that he's in the UFC. again, you don't get to the UFC by coincidence for the most part. You have to earn your way there. That being said, that roster still has some fucking fluff and there's still some filler in the numbers. And this is one of those situations, in my opinion, where they're taking a guy who they could easily, for my money, be putting him against a top 15, maybe even top 10 contender, and he would be able to hold his own and put on a legitimate great performance. And they're throwing him soup cans like Gabriel Benitez. Like, I don't want to say this is going to be an easy fight or a boring fight or a slow fight. I just feel like this is a situation where I'm hoping they're throwing this guy to Super Sadiq as an example or as a chance for him to really shine in his abilities, to put on a class that people who don't quite know Super Sadiq or don't know the Youssef name will get a chance to see why guys like me and TJ and RJ have been talking about Super Sadiq so much since we first got a glimpse at him, because this kid is fucking good. He's got great fight IQ. He's quick as shit. He's strong as all get out, and he can move to anywhere the fight needs to go. If it's on the ground, he can handle himself. If it's striking, he can handle himself. If he needs to shoot a takedown or stop a takedown, he can handle himself. I'm hoping this is one of those situations where they're just throwing a guy at Sadiq so that he can put on a class, so that he can look spectacular, because I don't think this fight's going to leave the second round. I think Sadiq is going to take this, and I think he's going to do exactly what we're hoping. He's going to come out, look spectacular, show off the skills that some of us know he has, but the real mainstream fans haven't had a chance to see yet, because it's the second fight on the main card. They're not putting him on the prelims. It's almost, not to be disrespectful to Sadiq, but I feel like this fight and the Asunciao fight could have easily swapped places and maybe even made the main card that much better. I understand wanting to keep the excitement, flowing all the way through, and I understand the placement here, but this is, one of my opinion, going to be a very one-sided fight. I think Sadiq is going to come out. I think he's going to put on a masterclass. I think he puts Benitez away in the second round by stoppage.
I don't watch the Contender Series much because it's competition with me when I'm live on Tuesdays. So I should start watching the replays, but I'm just going to have to say Super Sadiq Youssef because Meter says so. So I'm excited to see him now.
There's worse reasons.
Oh, man. That just killed me. Shit. Okay. Man, so fucking Youssef. That kid is one of those rare phenomenon coming into the combat sport. Like, he has some fucking ridiculous sort of like DNA. Like, he used to be a fucking warrior. That's what his family's legacy is, because that kid is no fucking joke. Coming into the Contender Series on his first fight, he absolutely fucking stomped the people that he was fighting. I mean, he absolutely fucking ragdolled them, and he is continuing to do the same thing every fight. I agree with Meter with her giving him those gatekeeper status fighters, and he's keep on consistently going through them and going through them and going through them. He needs to get somebody that is a legitimate competition to what he is putting down in the UFC. He may only have a 9-1 record, but that kid, he's here to do fucking work, and that is what he's doing every single time he gloves up.
Let me say one more thing, just so, like, right now, I just went over to YouTube and found, one of his fights on YouTube. So anybody that watches the show or maybe wants to get into watching UFC, maybe they do find it exciting. Whenever they have a big UFC, you could find just about all the fighters on the main card. UFC will put up a video of one of their best fights on YouTube and to go to watch it. So I've never seen him fight, but now I can just go over to YouTube and watch one of his good fights. So it's a pretty cool thing that they do. Almost every week they have new fights up of who's fighting that week.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm saying fucking Yusuf. Second round, it's going to be some sort of brutal fucking KO. It's going to be absolutely brutal.
There we go. Start talking before I unmuted. I agree. I think this is going to be, well, I'm hoping anyway. I think this is going to be a situation where we get to see Sadiq really show off and we get a chance to see something on the main card that predominantly before now we've really only seen on prelims and on the Contender Series. So moving along from Super Sadiq and the ass whooping that I think that he's going to lay down to probably the most interesting fight, I think, on this weekend's upcoming cards. What several of us have deemed the battle of the supplement warriors here. We are talking about one Yoel Romero versus Paulo Costa. This this fight, aside from being an absolute demonstration of fucking yokedness on an epic scale, this is a situation where we've got two gentlemen both coming off of USADA violation and suspensions. The difference being Paulo Costa is still claiming his innocence and saying that he would be vindicated, but he doesn't have the $500 to pay for his samples to be tested. And then you've got the other side of the coin here with the new $26 million lottery winner in Yoel Romero, who, to his credit, sued the supplement company that he was taking supplements from and won a $26 million settlement when they proved they were selling tainted supplements. Now, whether Yoel actually knew they were tainted or not before he took them, that's a whole nother story. What I will say is I don't give a fuck if you're an Olympian or not. You don't get that physique and maintain that physique as a 42-year-old man on the natch very often.
Look, that's Brazilian. You don't know how old he is.
I mean, to be fair, exactly. That man came from Cuba and he could be 17 and we just don't have the right paperwork. He could be 53 using his grandson's license. We don't.
He's 80, man.
Right? He's one of those weird Cuban gentlemen that came out of there just no neck having, yoked as fuck being big dudes. So we will have to watch because this is one of those situations where Yoel Romero is a Cuban Olympic wrestler. He is the fucking upper echelon of the upper echelon. For lack of a better comparison, he's the DC of 205. What DC should have been to 205 with his resume. The other side of that coin, you have a young, no neck possessing gentleman in Paulo Costa who is coming to try and make the biggest splash in the UFC possible, albeit with some potentially tainted supplements. That being said, when we see Costa in the octagon, he's no slouch. The kid has got serious steel in his hands. He's got a pretty decent chin, and he's got a pretty well-rounded game. The problem is, don't forget Jesus. Don't forget Jesus. Yoel Romero can take this fight anywhere. If he gets you to the ground, you're in trouble. He keeps you on the feet, you're in trouble. You try and shoot on him, you're in trouble. Yoel Romero is not by any stretch of the imagination the baddest man in that division. We've seen him handled several times. But for the competition level that Costa has been going up against, compared to the fucking giant leapfrog he is taking and stepping up to Yoel Romero, this I feel is more of a challenge for Costa than it is for Yoel. This is a situation where not very many people at all expect Paulo Costa to come in here and win. Granted, he's got a hype train. A lot of those hype train members have ignored the USADA violation, but he's got a hype train. And a lot of his hardcore fans really feel that he's unstoppable in the UFC. The problem is those fans predominantly don't realize that the level of competition he's been going up against versus the level of competition he's up against now are night and day difference. That being said, Yoel Romero is far from fucking perfect, and we have seen multiple holes in his game illustrated by multiple different fighters. But in this competition that we're talking about, where it's a no neck having motherfucker going against a no neck having motherfucker in a no neck competition, supplement fueled, I think this is a situation where we're going to see Yoel come out and just put on a clinic. I don't think this is going to be an easy fight because Costa is dangerous at any point, much like a lot of the bigger UFC fighters are. But I think at this point in his career, Yoel has seen enough and has been through enough that I don't think there's anything Costa can pull out of his bag of tricks that's going to surprise him. On the other hand, though, I think when Yoel lands that power overhook sweeping bomb that he throws on Costa's chin, he's going to get a rude awakening. And I don't think it's going to be an easy fight because, like I said, Costa's always got that chance. But I think this is going to be one of those situations where it may be a bit of a slow start, but I feel like when Yoel lands that sweeping bomb, it's going to be a sweeping bomb that takes Costa out of the competition here. I think Yoel puts him to sleep. I think it happens late in the first. I don't think this goes to a round 2.
Michael B. Bing, I love you. Yeah, I love Yoel Romero, and I think, I don't know, man. I think he's a bit too much for Paul Costa right now. He's no Brad Tavares. He's fucking I think he beat Robert Whittaker that last fight. So
that's an arguable fight as well.
So he could have been the champion right now. Yeah, I just think that he's going to be too much experience, like really how Joe Rogan says how he fights is exactly how he fights. He lulls you a little bit. He goes slow and then he's just explosive, and it's very it's very confusing. Even just to watch, it's very confusing. So imagine being in the ring with that. Paul Costa's more just fast all the time. He's just very quick all the time, very strong all the time. But yeah, anybody that's never seen the Joe Rogan with Yoel Romero, go check that out, because that'll show you like why, if he's not on supplements, or listen, he was on supplements, but the way that they raise these guys in Cuba to fight in the Olympics is crazy. Like, they would have to fight for their food every night, and it's a really good podcast, and they have Joey Diaz on there too, which is amazing.
I agree, and that is a perfect example as well, because you get a chance to sit down and hear directly from Yoel how, like you said, in Cuba, when you're on the Olympic training team, you literally, your place on that team determines how you get treated. Like you were saying, every night they were fighting for who gets the lion's share of the food, who gets to sleep in the room with the air conditioning in Cuba in the summer, who gets the ice baths after workout, who has to just go swim out in the fucking water. It's a whole different fucking caliber, and I absolutely agree. Anybody who has not seen the Joe Rogan Experience Fight Breakdown or MMA podcast with Yoel Romero and Joey Diaz as the translator, go watch it. You will do yourself a solid service watching that.
Son of a bitch. Every time I talk about fucking Romero, fucking Joey Diaz fucking comes up. Fucking Argoon. Fucking A, man. Okay. So one thing that everybody's talking about, because both these guys just came off a suspension, people don't talk about the supplement company that Yoel Romero was using, and it's now known even in Ohio. I have friends of mine, and they got hit for it, and then they did the investigation, and it's the same company that Yoel Romero takes. Nobody talks about that. There's been a fucking lot of people that have been getting hit, even in the small independent leagues, for the same supplement company. So it is known that this supplement company has had tainted supplements for over a year now. It's well known. It's well documented. So when people are like, "Oh, but he's juiced up. He's juiced up." Yeah, he was taking supplements from a company that were tainted. So it's different between like the EPO people, like the whole Dillashaw situation versus this, because he might have not known that he was taking tainted supplements. And there's a lot of people that I know personally that have been hit on that. So I do need to say that. But two, just like both of these gentlemen said, fucking Yoel Romero, he is going to be way too fucking much to come at fucking Costa. He's just going to be way too much. He has that style of slow, steady, put you in a fucking coma, and then explosive and actually put your ass into a fucking coma. Like that man is unstoppable, and it's just gonna be fucking amazing. I love watching Romero fight. He's one of those fucking big bitches that I love to fight. I love watching fight, and I really don't like the light heavyweight, because it's all just fucking, it's just too slow for me. But Yoel Romero is that exception. That motherfucker is outrageous. Yoel Romero, first fight, KO, TKO. It's not leaving the first round. It's not.
Yeah, that's another thing, is there's a lot of guys that are around 40 age that should not fight. Most fighters at 40, I think, should start thinking about it, but he's an exception. There's always going to be an exception to the rule, and he's the exception to that rule. He's definitely still probably in his prime right now.
Absolutely.
Maybe reaching the end, but it's very close.
Yeah, he's absolutely, I agree completely. He's definitely starting to tiptoe towards that back nine section of his career, but he's absolutely not there yet. And the thing that you got to remember about Yoel Romero is, no matter how you feel about him, he love you. He love you.
Fucking cocksuckers. Yeah. Let's put it that. Look at Yoel Romero 40 and look at Daniel Cormier 40. Then again,
Right, yeah.
Daniel Cormier never looked like Yoel Romero ever. So
That's true. That's true. But no, that's a completely valid point here. Now, moving on from this to the potatoes, as it were, to the meat and potatoes of this meat and potatoes segment of the meat and potatoes of this episode here, we are talking about the co-main event, the AKA people's main event, kind of, but not really. Let me start by saying this. When they announced this fucking fight more than 6 months ago, I said right away I would be impressed if this fight actually even happened. Great matchup, great potential, but due to the people involved and their both histories of shenanigans, I said right away I would be impressed if this fight actually made it to the octagon. We are 72 hours out, and it's starting to look more and more realistically like this fight might not make it to the octagon itself, especially after what I was talking about during the opening in the news segment. We're referring here, of course, to Nate Diaz versus Anthony Pettis at 170. Now, I will say this. If we get this fight, this is almost certainly going to be fight of the night, barring a crazy performance by Yoel or a crazy performance by Stipe. This is what I'm anticipating, if it happens, to be the fight of the night. Not because I really like or because I really hate either one of these dudes, but because these two dudes don't like each other. Nate Diaz has been arguing for and barking at Anthony Pettis since Anthony Pettis was the 155-pound champ. And I quote, I want to fight the fucking Wheaties, dude. They made the fight for him. We're here. We're talking about it right now. Nate Diaz, after years of bitching and being Nate Diaz, has gotten what he asked for, and now is potentially throwing it all away by no showing to the fucking face-off, by smoking a joint, CBD or otherwise, indoors in California during the open workouts. Well, I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. The UFC has done more promotion in the last month for Nate Diaz than they have in the last 5 years combined. If nothing else, this is the best opportunity that Nate Diaz has had since his career in the UFC to really get shine, more so than when he beat McGregor, in my opinion here, because this is a fight that he called for over and over and over. It wasn't one of those situations where he got on the mic after he beat the shit out of a bitch-ass Michael Johnson and called out Conor McGregor, "You're taking everything I worked for." No, this ain't that. This is something where there are police documents to verify the altercations that Nick and Nate Diaz have gotten in trying to get their hands on Anthony Pettis in or out of the octagon for years now. There is legitimate bad blood here. And they are giving Nate what he asked for if he doesn't blow it and throw it all away. If this fight actually comes to fruition and Nate doesn't fuck this up, because Pettis showed up. Pettis and Dana took weird fucking photos at the face-off today because there was no Nate Diaz. Pettis is there. Pettis is ready, and he's willing to step in the octagon at 170. Diaz, on the other hand, we really don't fucking know. So if this fight actually happens, this has got some serious fucking potential. Everybody knows Nate Diaz is probably one of the best overall strikers, predominantly boxing, but overall strikers in the UFC, 155 or 170. I'll give him both ranges because the man has hands. He runs his mouth a lot, but he backs it the fuck up. There's a reason there is a War Diaz train to this day, and we haven't seen a Diaz brother in the octagon in 3 years at the earliest. Those boys come to fucking battle to the death. We have seen it time and time again. When Nate or Nick get in that octagon, you have to stop them. You can beat them, you can bleed them, you can squeeze them. They don't stop until they're unconscious. And then on the other side of that coin, you've got Showtime Pettis, who, to be fair, has had some great highlight reel moments in his career. The problem is that most of his highlight reel moments in his career either come from his WBC days or from his early UFC days. Anthony Pettis has not had a lot to brag about performance-wise in a long time, with the exception of that crazy fucking Wonder Boy Superman punch knockout. I think that is a little bit of an asterisk. One, because it wasn't really something he's used to. That was his first foray into 170. But for two, he was fighting a dude with an equally unorthodox style that he tries to present. So there was no way to see how that fight was really going to shake out to begin with as well. That being said, Anthony Pettis isn't really known for being that well-rounded of a fighter. Yes, he can do everything. He can strike, he can grapple, he can do jiu-jitsu, he can stand up and bang with you, but nothing really threateningly well. The two things that Anthony Pettis is really known for are his leg kicks. So if he gets those in, they're going to be a problem on you. But other than that, he's really known for jumpy, flashy shit that doesn't really do a lot of damage, but it looks good. The type of shit you would expect from a guy who tattooed the nickname on his back, Showtime. The guy's about flash more than damage, and that's the polar opposite of Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz doesn't give a fuck about flash. He's not here to put on a big glitzy, glamorous show. He's going to stand at the back of his range, and he's going to stock and slap you, throw his hands up, and make fun of you while he's punching you and keep coming forward at you. If this fight actually happens, the only chance I see of Anthony Pettis actually taking this is if he gets in and right away just starts lumberjack chopping at Nate's legs. We've seen it before. Conor did it as a perfect example. If you catch Nate with leg kicks, he almost never watches low. He's always watching high because he's relying on his boxing more than anything. He's watching for your hands, so he's always susceptible to kicks, especially those leg kicks that have a big impact the more you start to land them later in the fight. They slow you down. They take your power away. They make it harder for you to move. That's where Pettis will shine if this fight happens. That being said, in order to land those low leg kicks, you got to get fairly close to your opponent. And when you close the distance on Nate Diaz, he almost always has a 4 or a 5 or a 6 and then a slap shot combination waiting for you when you get there. I think if this fight goes down, I think Showtime is absolutely going to try to do some flashy shit to try and, make an example out of being called out by Diaz. But if they get in the ring together, I don't think it's going to be enough. I think the sheer tenacity, I think the toughness, and I think that relentless fucking pressure that Nate Diaz will pour on you like a fucking bucket is just going to be too much for the ever injury prone, ow, my hand, Anthony Pettis. Now, to be fair, we don't officially know whether he actually broke his hand versus Tony or not, but it sure the fuck looked like that was a way to quit in the cage, and there was never any confirmation of any broken bones in his hand afterwards. So we already know that there's a little bit of quit in Anthony Pettis at this point in the game. But is it going to show itself against Nate Diaz? I think it is. I think he's going to try and come out. He's going to try and be flashy. And I think Nate Diaz is going to be the fucking war zombie that we know him to be. And he's going to march forward and he's going to pour pressure on. And I think he's going to knock Anthony Pettis the fuck out. But I think it's going to be late. I think it's going to be middle of the third, maybe even late into the third. I think this is not going to be a quick fight. I think there's going to be a lot of trash talk. There's going to be a lot of hands up in the air, come get some kind of shit that goes down. But I think in the end, if it actually happens, I think Nate Diaz is just too fucking much for Anthony Pettis, and I think he puts his ass out.
All right, so interesting. I hope this fight happens. It's one of them fights where I'm not going to believe, just because of Nate, really, I'm not going to believe it until Bruce Buffer's screaming their names in the cage, kind of like Tony Ferguson versus Khabib, or even now Robert Whittaker. I kind of feel the same way. I'm not going to believe it until it happens. So I'm trying not to get my hopes up too high, but it is probably my favorite fight on the card. And I love me some Nate Diaz. And same thing with Anthony Pettis, but I was watching some Nate Diaz fights this week, trying to get hyped up for it. And I watched the one against Dos Nachos, Rafael, and Rafael really chopped his legs out really bad. And if Pettis could do that, I think it would just be, I look at it this way. Nate hasn't fought in a while, and who knows? He looks good in the workouts. He does, blunt in mouth and all, but I think Pettis, with the momentum and that he's been active, that I'm going to take Pettis on this one. And that's pretty much the only reason why. If Nate was active this whole time, I would absolutely take Nate. But because of the momentum coming off the Wonder Boy, and I just believe Pettis is working harder right now. I don't know. I guess it's just how Nate is in the media is why I think that. I know that they work hard, him and his brother. They do all their triathlons and stuff and all that. But I just feel that Pettis wants it more right now. I think he wants that Conor fight really, really bad, probably way more than Nate does. And I actually think I'd rather see that fight right now. I don't really need to see another Nate Conor fight. It would be awesome, but I'd like to see Conor Nate too. I mean Conor Pettis also. So yeah, I got Pettis on this one.
I could see that as well. That's a good point, and I agree. I think realistically, a Nate Conor trilogy isn't gonna be a bad fight, but I agree with you. I think Conor versus Pettis would be a little bit more of a show than a battle. Where Nate Diaz and Conor, they're going to fucking war.
I mean, but that's that war mentality. That's just that's just fucking Diaz. Both of them, Nate and Nick. That's just fucking them. They go in. They might not fucking train. Well, look like they train for shit, but they just go in and just fucking brawl. And I think that's what that sort of attitude is what makes Nate Diaz so fucking dangerous. Is because he doesn't give a fuck. He is just going for your head. And that's what I fucking love. I love about Nate. He has a fucking mouth on him, but he consistently shuts motherfuckers up. He might lose a fight, but he will still gain that fighter's respect because, like, dude, that was a fucking war. That is a fucking war. He fucking died out there. Point blank. Period. I love the Diaz brothers. I am. If this fight is official, if Bruce Buffer calls the Diaz name come Saturday, which I fucking hope he does, I want to see Nate walk away with this because he's been calling him out for fucking years. I want to see Nate come back in and fucking wreck shop in the fucking weight class. I want to see Nate be fucking Nate, be the old school Nate Diaz that he fucking was. Because when he was that attitude, that style, the man was fucking unstoppable. And that's what I want to see from him come Saturday. I want to see Nate fucking, and again, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers. That's what I want.
I think if it comes down to it and they actually get this shit to happen, I agree. I think we're going to see a classic Diaz performance, and I think we might be pretty happy at the end of the results if they can get his ass to the octagon. So we still got 48 more hours to see if they can actually corral this fucker, but
that's his attitude. That's exactly. Fucking Nate, and everybody knows it.
Exactly, and that's exactly why I opened it with saying this is true to form Nate Diaz. It's not surprising in the least bit. I'm not surprised, motherfuckers. But if we can get him in the octagon, I think we're in for a fucking battle here, and I think it'll be impressive.
Yeah, that Dustin Poirier fight wasn't because of Dustin Poirier's injury. He would have fought with that injury. He did that because he was sick of dealing with the shit. He was just sick of it. So he said, you know what? I got an injury. I'm fucking done with this fight. Let's move on. And that's exactly what happened. And I'm sure Dana was all for it. Anybody ever see the Tommy Toehold 420 video with the Diaz bro? That's so funny. He's so good at doing both of their impressions.
Yes, he is. No, I agree completely. I think this is going to be, if it happens, this is going to be a fucking war, and it's going to be entertaining to watch. But that will bring us to the meat and potatoes of the meat and potatoes that is the meat and potatoes of this particular meat and potato segment. We are talking about the main event of the evening, the headliner, the reason that we are all excited for Saturday night, the rematch, long overdue, in my opinion, wrought with bullshit getting us down the road that we had to travel to get here, but damn it, we are here. Saturday night, Daniel Cormier versus Stipe Miocic 2, the rematch, the decision maker. This fight has so many more implications than just who holds the belt come Sunday morning. There is so much to be settled with this rematch. The fluke of all flukes, in my opinion, that lucky clinch uppercut shot that DC landed, followed almost immediately by one of the most egregious eye pokes in UFC history, like it or not, fanboys. We are talking about a guy who was legitimately run out of the 205 division by the man who has always had his number. But on the other side of that card, Daniel Cormier has never been defeated at heavyweight. Not in the UFC, not in WEC, never. DC is undefeated at heavyweight, and to his credit, has victories over some of the biggest names in the heavyweight division, not counting the Stipe fluke. But then you look across the octagon, and you see Stipe Miocic, the best heavyweight in UFC history, in my opinion. Not just because he won the heavyweight belt and defended it more times than any other heavyweight has, but because how he got that belt to defend. The list of names that Stipe took out to get to his championship and then defended during his championship is a literal who's who of the greatest fights in UFC heavyweight division history. This man is not just good. He is fucking great. And he's not just great. He's great everywhere. He can stand and trade with Francis Ngannou. He can out-wrestle JDS. He outstruck Fabricio Verdum going backwards and laid him the fuck out. Fabricio Verdum has come out this week and talked to press and said that he does not understand how that first one went through the way that it does, but even he has no doubt in his mind that Stipe is going to come back and correct that wrong on his record and get this victory. There's something to be said when the man that you beat to get where he is knows how much better you are than the man that you're competing against in this situation here. That carries quite a bit of weight, in my opinion. Fabricio Verdum is not one to mince words, and he doesn't give legitimate high praise compliments of this nature lightly or often. So for Fabricio, of all people, to come out and talk about what he knows about Stipe versus what he knows about DC and his opinions holds a lot of water for me. This isn't just about Stipe getting his belt back. This isn't just about Stipe getting back on the track that he had cemented himself in with such a long, rigorous road to get there. This is about Stipe's legacy, in my opinion. This is Stipe's legacy versus DC's legacy. DC has highlight reel wins on his resume. He was technically the champ. He held the 205 belt. He held, for a brief period though it may be, the 265 heavyweight belt. I don't believe that he earned it, and I don't believe that was a legitimate knockdown. I think, like we always say, there's always a puncher's chance, and I think DC cashed that lottery ticket out on the puncher's chance in the last fight. You can tell me he trained for that shit all you want. I don't fucking believe it, because I watched these lead-ups. I watched the behind the scenes. I watched their social media, and I watched their training. That was never anything that was mentioned or shown or even implicated until after the fight. And then they're going to say he knew that was going to happen. Fuck all the way off with that bullshit. Come back and then fuck all the way off with it again. I'm not fucking having it. That was a fluke of fluke. That was exactly why we say there's always a puncher's chance. I think what this comes down to is DC spending the last 2 weeks telling every camera that's been pointed in front of him, Stipe could be my last fight. Stipe might be my last fight. I wanted to retire at 40. Now I'm over 40. I don't know what's coming after Stipe because I'm not thinking about anything after Stipe. Stipe might be my last fight. We've said it time and time again. When you start thinking about and talking about retirement, mentally, you're already there. You're out of the fucking game. When you're looking past your opponent at retirement, your head is not in the game where it needs to be. And against a guy as dangerous and as legitimate as Stipe Miocic, that could be the biggest mistake you could ever make. Not only do I think DC is coming into this overlooking Stipe and looking more at retirement than the fight, I think Stipe is coming in this looking at redemption. Not just redemption of a loss, but redemption of a blemish in his legacy, a fluke that upset a beautiful momentum train that was rolling to one of the greatest legacies, and I believe still is rolling towards that legacy. But I think that little hiccup was enough to motivate Stipe so much he refused to take another fight waiting for this rematch. He spent the last year completely out of the octagon, still training, but raising his daughter and focusing on becoming the best fighter he can be when he gets the rematch, because he knew it was coming. And now that time is here. And I don't think Stipe, of all people, is anyone who's going to take that kind of an opportunity lightly. I don't think Daniel is coming in completely unprepared. That's not the type of guy he is. That's not the type of fighter he is. But I think based on all of this retirement talk, all of this, I don't know what's next, the back and forth he's had going with John Jones over the last week, which is just getting annoying at this point, honestly. I think DC's head is not where it needs to be, stepping into a fight of this fucking caliber. And I think Stipe has laser focus on getting his belt back. I don't think this is going to be a quick fight. I don't think this is going to be an easy fight. I don't think this is going to be a one-punch knockdown like it was the first time. I think this goes 4 rounds. I think this goes into heavy championship waters. I think this goes to the hard territory, the championship rounds. I think in the 4th round, though, Stipe is going to put DC away. I don't think it's going to be a knockout. I don't think it's going to be a submission. I think it's going to be a stoppage. I think DC is going to just not have it in him. I think Stipe is going to upend DC's plan, and I think he's just going to be too fucking much when he finally starts to pour it on towards the end, and I think Stipe takes his belt back in the 4th.
Yeah. So, yeah, I have Stipe. I hope Stipe wins. I'm rooting for Stipe. I'm extremely nervous because DC is a very smart fighter. He is most likely injured right now because he's always fucking injured. He probably should retire. But he is a very smart fighter. He's a very good fighter. I do enjoy DC. There are things about him I don't like. But for the most part, I do like DC. I just like Stipe a whole lot more. The refs, man. Listen, I don't think that fight was stopped early, but I think I'm watching all these old fights. I just watched Stipe versus Mark Hunt. Stipe beat up Mark Hunt for like 3 fucking rounds, and they ain't stopped that shit. And it's just, you watch all these old fights, and it's like, what the fuck? Even some of the new fights are like, even like the fight we watched last weekend with Mike Perry and shit, like they could stop some of these fights at a certain point or whatever. But like sometimes it's just like too soon. Like I hope Herb Dean isn't in there for this fucking one. I can't take that. He'll let you get choked out for fucking 5 minutes. But if you get fucking knocked down, he's fucking waving his arms really fucking quick. I think people could take more than what they're showing. It's just like you just got to put it this way. If you were in there, would you want it to stop that early off of one punch? If you're technically you're trained to get back up. Now Stipe did look out there. He did. But I wouldn't want to see that happen again if he was a little more. I mean, Stipe's got hit by big guys and he's taken it. And he said that he felt DC's power and he could take it. It's quite fine. It just caught him off guard. And I think it was DC being very smart. The eye poke, the in the clinch, hitting him, pushing him down, I think it was extremely smart. And it paid off for him. I don't think that he could beat Stipe 2 times in a row. I would like to see, I mean, if Stipe wins, they're probably going to do a 3rd one. But I want to see Stipe Jones. I don't want to see DC and Jones. I don't think it's going to go much different. I think DC has a better chance at heavyweight, but I don't think that he's going to win. I just don't want to see it. I don't really need to see it again. I don't really even think that they're that exciting of fights, really. So, yeah, I got Stipe, but I'm nervous because it just seems like DC, there's something on his side. I don't know what it is, but he's got that fucking massive dad bod. I don't fucking know.
I agree. DC definitely has a horseshoe wedged up his ass somehow, but I don't know. I think this might be the last little bit of luck running out this weekend. We'll see.
Yeah, and as far as what has been told to the media, there will not be a Jones DC3. There won't. That John Jones has gone on record a handful of times to every single new sports broadcasting company. It's like, no, this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. There's nothing that he can say that can make me fight him again. I am better than him in every single way. He did not take my championship from me. He is not the light heavyweight champion. He was, but he did not take it from me.
And he says, if they show me the money, he showed me $1 million, I'll fucking fight him. Yeah. I'll beat his ass again for 50 mil.
Yeah. But that, as much as I would like to see that, it's not going to happen. It just won't. But that's besides the point. We're talking about DC's fucking Stipe here. I'm gonna start this off with how much I enjoy Stipe, not only as a fighter, but as a fucking human being, with what he does with the MMA community and outside of the community. I mean, the dude is that dude is just a stand-up guy. I fucking love who Stipe is in the ring, outside of the ring. He's just fucking amazing person, and he's a hell of a fighter. And that was a fluke of all flukes with DC Stipe won. That was just bullshit across the board. And going to the side of DC, I like how DC fights. He's a very smart fighter. He fights to his strengths, but I hate who he is whenever he gets in front of a microphone. He becomes a fucking crybaby piece of shit. I hate that. You're a fighter, be a fucking fighter, say what you got to say, nothing more, and then go on to the next question. I hate he talks about what happens in the past. What happened in the past was in the past. You're looking at this next fight. You'd stop talking about 2 years ago with you and John Jones. That's fucking irrelevant. That happened 2 years ago. Think about what's about to happen this week with you and Stipe. Don't think about what's going to happen 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now. Think about fucking Saturday. He always does it. He's always talking about the next big thing for him, what he's going to do in a month. Shut the fuck up. Worry about this goddamn fight, man. Because that is what fucks you over every single time. So you get the shit beat out of you, but you always play smart and you always take the W, which will not happen this week. Because DC has the biggest holes in how he fights and how he moves. He has the biggest fucking holes. But nobody is fast enough to fucking exploit them until Stipe comes in here and fucking wrecks shop. Because Stipe has waited for this. He has watched all of his fights, has broken everything down, and he is going to exploit every single hole in DC's fight. Every last little thing. He's going to make DC look like fucking trash. Just like John Jones made him look like garbage. Stipe is going to do the same fucking thing come Saturday. It's not going to be a question of how, when, or where. It's just going to be a question of it's going to happen. So I'm saying Stipe late in the third, early in the fourth. And I can't remember the amount of fights that Stipe had as a heavyweight, as a champion. I can't remember because there's just too many. How many has DC had? Like 2, right?
As at heavyweight?
Yeah.
In the UFC.
He defended once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think he's got
twice. If he wins, it would be 2. So he still wouldn't have as many as Stipe.
Yeah, he's still short on Stipe's record.
And you call yourself a fucking champion, bitch. Stipe is gonna go in with a force to be reckoned with, and he is gonna make Daniel Cormier look like trash.
I agree, and I absolutely hope that that's the way it goes down, but that's what we've got, folks. That is our breakdown of the UFC 241 card for this weekend. Thank you for tuning in. Like we always say, if we gave you a laugh, if we threw an opinion at you that you weren't familiar with, if we made you think about something that you hadn't thought about before, give us a thumbs up. Maybe subscribe. Hit that bell if you do so you don't miss the notifications. Maybe even share an episode with a friend. Help us try and grow this damn thing. But on the other side of that, if we're just a bunch of idiots talking into cameras and you think we're just doing a waste of time bullshit show here, give us a thumbs down. I won't dispute it. We earned it. But before we head out of here, I do want to take a minute and thank all these fine folks for coming along and doing the damn thing with me here, for providing feedback, for giving me an opinion to work off of here that isn't just me echoing against the damn wall. First and foremost, if somebody wants to talk fighting in Fishtown, how the fuck are they going to be able to get a hold of you, Nick Devine?
You could get a hold of me at n.divine83 on YouTube and Instagram. And thank you for having me. Had fun. Can't wait to see these fights. Yeah, we should put a segment in where we talk about the fights from the week before.
I agree. I think we may start doing that. I think we might start putting that up in the front with the news and recent events. I think we might start doing a little bit of a recap from the weekend before here, because especially like today, we had so much to talk about before. Last weekend, we had Newark shit to talk about. I think you're right. I think we are going to have to make an actual segment beginning now for the recaps.
Yeah. All right. But yeah, thanks for having me. Had fun. And yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and all that stuff.
Absolutely. And thank you again for being here and taking the time out of your life to come and talk some MMA shit with us. Now, the other side of that coin, the man who holds down Ohio single-handedly, even though he's a little guy, RJ, if folks need to know how they can try and move in on your territory, you're going to start them out.
Oh, man, you're going to try to come in on my territory. First, I'm going to have to show you the ropes of Ohio, first off. But, you know, in order for you to even, like, think about doing that, you know, you can always find me over there on Instagram at RJ__vapes and on the YouTubes here at RJ Vapes. You can find me at both of those. It was good to be here tonight. There's a lot of shit to talk about. And I do have to say 3 things before we end this. 1, you need to watch your mouth about what you say about the redheaded stepchild. 2, YouTube, I have facial hair just like this man does. So fuck you with that. Do you have underage guests on this show? And 3, just for TJ, Green Bay sucks.
He won't dispute it. He earned it.
Oh, quick little behind the scenes there. I showed this to a couple of the folks behind the scenes. Ever since I have had RJ coming on the show, every time we publish an episode that he is on, I get a little disclaimer notification on my on the inside, the editing side of YouTube that asks me if there are minors in my video, and if so, to make sure that all minors in my videos comply with local minor work laws as well.
YouTube, you see this? You see this facial hair? You see this facial hair, YouTube? You see it? It's there, damn it.
I mean, I'm not saying the babyface kid caused it, but it started when the babyface kid showed up. That's all I'm going to say. But that is all the time we have for this evening. So I do appreciate each and every one of you coming out, taking the time to watch this shit, whether you were here with us live or you're catching a replay. Thank you for tuning in. That is all we have for this evening. So remember, don't let ignorance stop you. You can root for anything. And in the words of a no-neck having yoked Cuban, see you soon, boy. Have a great night, folks.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. But they fought with expert timing. There were funky Chinamen from funky Chinatown. They were chopping them up, they were chopping them down. It's an ancient Chinese art, and everybody knew their part. From a fainting to a slip, and a kicking from the hip. Everybody was kung fu fighting.